Okay, I welcome you all here. It's wonderful to have you all here at Starr for our Witness to History program. My name's Nan Jackson, and I'm the program coordinator, and I'm lucky enough to have people in the community and outside of the community volunteer to speak about their witness to history. And this is our third program, and there'll be more coming up, so just watch for the advertisements. Anyway, tonight we have Consolee Nishimwe speaking from Rwanda. She was 14 years old when her life was set upside down. And she's going to be interviewed by a friend of hers and mine, Judith Garten, who introduced us, and who is herself a child of the Holocaust. Is that right? Yes. So there is a connection in some way between, an emotional connection that has drawn these two women to become such good friends. And I think maybe they'll explain that a little tonight. At any rate, Judith is a local person, and she is going to explain how they met and interview Consolee. So I welcome you all. Also, Consolee has a book that she's written, which is a very, memorable book, and it is for sale for $16 after the program. And if you want her to sign it, she'd sign it. So anyway, I'm turning this over to Judith. Thank you.
I'm just going to stand for my introduction. So I grew up in the shadow of World War II. Both my parents had been involved in the Holocaust in some way. And I have always wondered, how do we create these unimaginable acts of brutality? What creates this mayhem? And I remember in 2004 listening to the radio and shocked, absolutely shocked by what I heard happening in Rwanda with the Hutus massacring the Tutsis. And I started to weep. I was surprised by that in a way. Not that we all don't weep at horrible things, but it had some extra quality to it that I couldn't understand. And I remember telling friends about it and saying, I wish there was something I could do. Well, a number of months later, maybe even 6 months later, I was living over in Woodstock at the time, and I was standing in my living room, and I heard on the radio, on NPR, that there was going to be a genocide survivor named Immaculate Ubigeze come to Vassar and speak. And I knew in that moment there was a stillness that came over me. I had to go. I had to go. And I went with the intention that I wanted to be a witness to their pain. There were going to be a panel of genocide survivors, including this woman, Immaculate. So we got to Vassar, sat pretty much in the front row, because I really wanted to look into their eyes. And when Immaculate's turn came, she told this amazing story of how she had been hidden for many months with 7 other women. And she told that story to me. She sort of picked me out. It was this instant connection. And at the end of it, we walked toward each other and we just embraced. And she said, thank you so much. I felt you were like a mother healing me by listening to the story. And the reason I want to tell you this is that, yes, this is a witness to history event, but the lens is changing a little bit. We can't really say that you were a witness to history, Consolee, but she was involved, a participant, experienced that history. But we've come to witness her and her story. And I just want to thank you for that, because you offer healing to someone each time you're willing to listen to what they went through. The pain, and at the same time, the joy and the inspiration that came from that. So thank you. So, you're welcome. Incidentally, here is a picture of Rwanda, which the map of Africa. But Rwanda is this tiny little area here, no bigger than the size of Maryland.
Right. On everybody's seat, there was a map that showed Rwanda. And, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, Consolee, tell us what life was like in Rwanda before the genocide.
First of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me here to be here with all of you. It's an honor for me to meet the community here. Thank you so much. And Judith is a very, very good friend, and I'm so happy you're the one who is doing this, and I'm happy to do it. Thank you. Before the genocide, I was very young. Of course, I will tell you what I know as a young 14 years old, at the age of 14 years old. It was just a very normal life for me. I was not born in a city, in the capital, Kigali. I was born in a small town. And my parents were just very simple teachers, teaching in a community. And for me, everyday life was very, very normal. And despite the tension that was in the country at that time between Hutus and Tutsis, and of course, my parents being persecuted because they were Tutsis, at the end of the day, I came home happy, and my parents were very loving parents, and with my 4 siblings, I was the oldest, and my younger sister and my 3 brothers who are here. This is a picture of us a few months before the genocide happened in 1984. It was a beautiful life, and we didn't have much. We were just very simple family, but loving each other, with grandparents living around and other family members. And to me, I felt really happy, living within my household, and everything else that was happening outside. It was just, I felt that I had a family to come to, despite all the things that were happening outside of the family. Yeah.
When did you start to notice a difference, that something was broiling underneath the surface?
When I started realizing what was happening is when I started going to school, because that's when I could understand my surrounding and what was happening. And I remember the first time in elementary school when our teacher actually was using us to stand up. If you're a Hutu, stand up in a Hutu. If you're a Tutsi, stand up on the Tutsi side. And then as a kid, of course, somehow, because of the way when they were mentioning Tutsis, and somehow certain kids understood because of probably what they heard in their families, it was kind of humiliating, but somehow as a kid I never paid very much attention to that until in junior high school, when I started getting bullied by a classmate, calling us Tutsi, cockroaches, actually dehumanizing, using the words that she was hearing in her household from her parents or other people who were, telling her that. And she bullied me, and then I started realizing that was really bad. Until also around the country, so hearing on the radio what the former government at that time was preaching to people, telling the Hutus, the other Hutus, they say Tutsis are not good, and other things that were really dehumanizing, calling the cockroaches and snakes. And of course, it was very hard or even difficult for me to hear that as a kid. I was worried, but at the same time, I can observe how my family was worried for what they were hearing. As a kid, you don't know much, but at the same time, you can observe how your parents are and what they do. They are very careful in the way they behave because they are worried about what's going to happen to them. So, yeah, that's pretty much what myself, I know that I observed very well. But until the genocide started, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you make some distinctions between Hutus, Tutsis, the Twa, any little historical information on it so that you would get a background or a context of how this rivalry happened?
Looking at everyone around me, pretty much we looked the same. So we're all the same skin and black people, or living in the country, in the same country, speaking the same language. But somehow, for me, when I was going to school, there's a way that we were told that somehow Tutsis are different to Hutus, or the Twa, they come from somewhere else, and the Tutsis came somewhere else, and the Hutus are, yeah. But mostly, for me, there was not distinction, to look at them physically, but not knowing the history of how the Tutsis and Hutus used to be as a social class, not ethnic or anything. And then until the country was colonized, they colonized by Belgians, when they somehow managed to show them how different they are. So, and the Hutus kind of grew up in, learning that Tutsis are not good people. And then that's when they started mistreating them and dehumanizing them. And they introduced the identity card showing who you are, and Tutsi and Hutu. That's how generational, people had identity cards showing who you are, if you are Hutu or Tutsi. And until, it was so bad to a point where since 1959, the Tutsis started going into exile because they were being killed. So it started early on. So it was very bad. Slowly, they were being killed, persecuted, and being denied certain things. Hutus were getting like school. It was very, very bad. And I heard it from my mother and my dad that they were not allowed to be able to do certain things, going to, to certain schools because they were Tutsis. So I learned that later when my mom explained to me very well in details. So, but I could see that my parents, even though we were going through that kind of persecution, they were trying their best to make sure that at least whatever small things we get, or if you are able to get to school, at least they were working hard to make sure that we learn as much as we could, using whatever we had around us. So, yeah.
Just as a point of information, the Hutu population was 85%, and the Tutsis were about 14%. And then the Twa, which are the Pygmies, was 1%. And there's always been this kind of fighting between them going on. So do you remember, what happened on that fateful day when the genocide began?
When the genocide began, I remember even before the genocide began in April, actually, around this time, this month, and even there were, around the country, I was hearing on the radio, how they were spreading the message throughout the national radio. We had RTLM, for those RTLM, for those who can look at online, so you can see the messages they were actually spreading on the radio, saying that the Tutsis are bad, the cockroaches, and they were actually encouraging Hutus living in the country that they should start working. Working at that time, that means killing. It didn't mean going to normal work. So it was encouraging them to kill the Tutsis, their Tutsis neighbors. I remember hearing that at home. My parents were so scared. The more they kept hearing that, they were so scared. But as a kid, of course, in my head, I was thinking probably it's something that will stop. Maybe there won't be any genocide until, we found ourselves going into hiding. So, and we were just told, well, you'll be killed. And everybody believed that every Tutsi in the country will be killed. So that's when April 6th, when the plane of the former president shut down, and it was used as a way of actually doing a mass killing. But truly, the genocide started many years ago. It was just gradually starting. So because they were very well prepared, you can see throughout the country the campaign that was really around, saying that the Tutsis will be, they have to be exterminated. And again, watching around you the kind of messages, that were being spread, dehumanizing them. So, and also some Tutsis were, being killed at home or being killed at work, or somehow you find someone is missing, and then until that time when the plane was shut down, that's when the killing started all over the country. They picked the machetes, and you wonder, the machetes, how everybody can have all these instruments, and they were actually having this big wood with nails on top. Everybody owned that. Every Hutu probably who wanted to kill somehow have that in their household. So, and for me, that showed me that how very well prepared they were. And they picked up a machete immediately. They started killing everyone, everywhere in the country, burned the houses, and it was very, very terrifying to watch how immediately everybody really, I would say majority of people really participated immediately to do that, and it was very, very terrifying to watch. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I hate to take you back to that day. Do you feel comfortable doing that? You do your best, yeah. If you can imagine, if that happened here, where all of a sudden you heard on the radio, okay, everybody go kill Tutsis, or let's all kill Rwandan or something, and people come out with these machetes and these sticks with the nails. You're in your home. What do you feel? What's the first thing you do? What do your parents do?
Yeah, I remember we were home when we started hearing, of course, that Tutsis were going to be massacred everywhere. And everybody, I remember the first time actually we didn't leave home immediately, and we realized there were people from other areas in the town, in other towns in the areas, who were coming actually running from their homes because their homes were being destroyed at that time. And I remember seeing that because we're now far from the local authority at that time. And there were a huge number of women and kids and young and old, running, and they were afraid. At the time, somehow people thought maybe the local authority will protect them. They somehow felt like probably they will never do what they are saying. So, and they ran to the local authority. And the mayor there at the time managed to keep as many people there as much as he could, and speaking to the other time, the other local leader who was, stadium in one of the big stadium that we had in the province.
Sports stadium?
Yeah. They wanted actually to have that huge number of people, to tell them to go there so they can actually kill as many people when they are gathered in that stadium. So I remember at the time, for me, my mom and my father and my siblings at that time, course, the rest of the family members were hiding in different places. And we happened to be with our paternal aunt. I don't know how she managed to come to be with us at that time. And I remember at first we managed to go, we realized, okay, we'll follow the crowd ourselves and try probably to figure out where to go to hide ourselves, maybe going to the stadium. For some reason, my mom, I don't know what came, the instincts that came through her. She realized, she said, no, I don't think we should follow the crowd. Let's figure out and go to a friend and hide us. So that's how we didn't follow the crowd, but the crowd kept going to the stadium. And we had to go, of course, to the neighbor, go to the friends, and went to hide there. And so many people were just looking around us, and the homes were being burned down and destroyed. And there were, killers carrying machetes, clubs, and all these big, thick with nails. They used actually to call them, in Kinyarwanda, is Hongano, Yumwanzi, which means not pity for our enemies. That's what it means. So they were carrying them and destroying, and it was very, very hard to see. And they started having roadblocks everywhere on the main road. So to make sure that whoever comes, who goes through that main road, because they will look identity cards and then kill them. So, and I remember, I'll never forget, because Rwanda is, the most majority of people there are Christians. So, and I remember a crowd of people who were just actually going to the stadium. They were singing. I remember a song as a young girl, going to church, hearing the song, I used to hear, and they were singing and calling God, help us through these trials and tribulation we are going through. And it kept going through my head, and how even older women and kids were hungry and crying, and it's hard that image is in my mind. So, and when we went in our first house to go to hide there, and in Rwanda, there's a way you can hide in the ceiling. So I don't know how to explain how the ceiling is like, but somehow they managed to take us in the ceiling. So, and we were spread in different rooms. So that was my siblings, my 4 siblings, myself.
And you were hiding on a ceiling and you were lying down, or?
They were like wooden, I don't know how I can,
slats.
So you can sit on them, It's not like you lay down, you just sit on them, or you manage to just bend yourself in there. So,
and no one could see you if they looked
no, but you could hear people talking, around the house, or even outside. So, and we managed to be there, and of course my paternal aunt was with us, and there was a young woman actually who used to stay in our home, but she was a Hutu, but she refused to go to her house because somehow she felt that she wanted to stay with us because we've been so kind to her. And she said, no, I'm not going to leave you being so kind to me. I'll stay with you. And she stayed with us. And it was not very easy to be there. But sometimes during the genocide, people have changed. You didn't know who was going to be kind for such a long time. And people have really learned to really hate the Tutsis in a way that was so deep. And they felt that Tutsis are not human beings like them. So, and I remember that first time, even though those people were good friends of us, they didn't want to keep us any longer. So while we were in the sitting, we were hearing the people crying and people, running around. It was so terrifying to hear what was happening outside. Until these people refused to keep us, and then one night we found ourselves, trying to figure out other places to go to hide. It was just going through the little forest and laying down on the ground, and it was, as a kid who used to be in the home, and of course my younger brother, this one was this age, and it was hard for him, and I remember that's the first night I felt that our lives were going to change completely. And early in the morning, because these killers were all over killing people, that's the only thing was happening in the country. They shut down everything, and I remember early in the morning, we were just sitting in the sorghum plantation, trying to, terrified and shaking, and I'll never forget my dad where he was sitting and the look of how he looked, and it was very, very hard for me to watch how worried he was, and he was not himself anymore. And the only person who was so strong was my mom. She just looked all of us, and she just even told my dad and said, keep praying within your heart. No matter what's going to happen, let's all stay together. If it happens to all of us together. And for some reason, when these killers approached the bushes and calling wherever you are, cockroaches, show yourselves before we kill you so badly, all of us were terrified. We started shaking and worried what we're going to do. And my aunt was scared too, so I could tell on her look. So when these killers approached, my aunt ran. Somehow she ran, and the other young girl too did the same one. And my aunt unfortunately was killed. But I didn't watch with my own eyes, but my other siblings saw what happened. So, and the rest of us were surrounded by these killers. They were carrying machetes, and they were having banana leaves around their waist. It was very hard as a kid to watch what's happening around you, what happened to the people that you normally see as normal people. All of a sudden, they are totally changed. And
I mean, these were some of them were friends of yours.
a friend of us, neighbors. It's almost like how you live here in the community. Most of the people know each other, so we really knew each other, or many of us. So it was very hard. So we started thinking, where are we going to hide? So it was very, very hard until we kept hiding. Of course, it was not very easy. Throughout the 3 months, hiding was not very easy at all, because there were times when you go to find someone to help you hide you, somehow they would call killers for you. And at that time, when we managed to find somewhere to hide, again, we went in the ceiling, but later on in the evening, the killers came back, and while we were in the ceiling, they were talking what they have done, how many people they have murdered. They were rewarding themselves with beers. Actually, they were drinking banana beers. That's a traditional beer in Rwanda. So until I'll never forget hearing them saying that my dad was one of the people that they have murdered, because they followed him when all of us went in the same different place to hide in. It was very hard for me to hear. My dad was a very good man and caring person, all of a sudden just murdered because simply being a Tutsi, and many other innocent people like him. It was very hard. As you know, girls, all these girls, or girls in general, are very close to their father. It was very, very hard for me. But somehow my mom kept encouraging me, so we kept holding each other and crying, of course. We didn't know whether we were going to survive, what we were going to do. And we kept hiding, going through the bushes those 3 months, and a lot of times...
You were hiding 3 months
Yeah.
in bushes.
In bushes, going sometimes finding someone to hide you, or there were so many things that happened. Some people...
How did you eat, or how did you sustain yourself?
sometimes when you find someone to hide you, they will feed you. And sometimes a lot of men, for a long time we didn't eat very well, so we drink water if you get a chance to get water. But a few times when you get someone to be kind, they will give you a little something to eat, but they won't hide you for a long time.
Yeah.
But within those 3 months, it was very, very hard to find someone to keep you for a long time. And a lot of times, it was very hard because it was a rainy season, and my mom, a lot of times, she was carrying my younger brother, and the rest of us would follow her. And sometimes we fall down, and we didn't know who to go to, who to turn to. And I remember somehow those who were very, very good friends of our family. I remember one family we went to find, to ask him if he can help us. And it was the time we were just going through the bushes and don't know where to hide. It was very hard because we were avoiding the main road to make sure that the killers they are having roadblocks all over the place. So, and we went to this house. And the man came outside, it was in the morning, and he just, when we knocked the door, and of course he heard it was my mom, he took a little bit longer to come outside, but then he came outside and he was wearing a towel around his waist, and instead of talking to us, he started calling the killers using a little drum he had in his hand. And there was a killer actually who was there at the time at his house. He was having a machete and a club, and he was just waiting, the order from him to kill us. So until somehow when things happened, no one really paid attention to him. No one came. And he was so mad, he went back in the house. And by the time he was in the house, this killer, he just showed us where to go and leave. For some reason, he didn't touch us. So we begged him to, of course, at first we were just begging him, but then he let us go, so we left. So these are some instances where you sometimes wonder how this person, who was killing people, all of a sudden didn't do that to us. It was just a miracle. So, and I remember another place we went to find a refuge again. It was throughout the night trying to figure out where to hide. And my mom went to this house because she would just figure out, say, wherever we are going, we just have to go. We don't know who is kind. Whoever is open, her heart or his heart is open to help us. So that person will help us. And then I remember this place we went, this woman, she was home with her children, and her husband actually was at the roadblock killing a lot of people there. So when we tried to knock the door, begging her, and we were so wet, we had been the rain was just, outside. And I remember my mom begging, and somehow, because my mom was a teacher at the time, and these kids, my mom used to teach them, and when they heard it was my mom, they just begged her mother, their mom, to help us, to say, Mom, can you help our teacher, please? And because of her kids, she allowed us to be in the house. And then we were, of course, able to sleep a little bit and get a little food. But somehow she said, I do not get any patience for Tutsis. I don't love them. I don't even care about them. It's just because of my kids. That's the reason why I did what I did. But somehow it just happened. So, and also there are so many things happening throughout the 3 months. Really, the people who have been unkind in so many different ways. And
Let me just interrupt you for a minute. Through this 3 months, what were you doing? Were you praying? Were you just so scared out of your mind? Like, how did you manage to carry on?
Throughout the 3 months, the whole time we're just praying. That's the only thing we're doing. So, because of growing up in a house where we were taught to pray, the only thing is to have faith and pray. So that's what we hold on to it. So we just kept praying and praying. No matter what happens, that's the only thing I think that was sustaining us throughout the whole time, even though bad things were happening, but still somehow that helped us to be a little bit stronger within. So, and we were just really ready for anything. Yeah, no matter what's going to happen, we're just ready. And because we didn't know whether we were going to survive. And during that time, even kids were being slaughtered everywhere. So they were not just killing adults, they were killing everyone. That it didn't matter, they were just saying from young to old, everyone must be killed. Yeah. And that's when we were discovered where we were hiding. That I detailed a lot of how we were discovered. And that's when my brothers were actually taken from us, because the boys, actually at that time, to find a boy who was still alive, it was very, very hard. And to hear that there's a boy who's still alive, it was almost like they've never done anything. So, and they took my brothers, and to our burn house.
They burned your house?
Yeah, our home was completely destroyed. They destroyed my home, and my grandparents and many other Tutsis' homes were destroyed. And they took my brothers, and the person actually who took, among the killers, was someone who grew up with my mom when my mom was growing up. Really very close family person. He was not just a neighbor. And they killed them to our destroyed home, and threw their bodies in a septic tank. It was very hard for my mom, for all of us, and my dad killed my brothers, my aunt, and probably many other people that we didn't know at that time how many were killed so far. We didn't know how to deal with it. Yeah, we're just hoping that if you will be killed, at least we won't be tortured. So, for my mom, it was completely, she was just, she didn't want to live anymore. This young one was, she was holding him all the time. It was not very easy at all. And
so then what happened to you?
And later on, when, of course, we kept hiding, of course, when you survive, things happen. And of course, the people that we were going to hide to, some of them were really, really dangerous. I mean, they were part of the killing. And when I was, actually we're hiding in one place, we discovered there my mom, and one of the men of the house was part of the killing, and then he came back in the house with a killer who was carrying a sword, and he was part of the killing. He was a neighbor. He was my neighbor, our neighbor for so long. And this man looked like he has murdered so many people. He came carrying a sword. For some reason, he decided to snatch me from my mom and my sister. Of course, there were three of us left at that time, my mom, my sister, and I. So, and everybody begged, would you kill all of us? Would you kill all of us instead of snatching her from all of us? So he refused, of course. The man of that house never stopped him. I was dragged by him on the street, being with a sword over my body. As you know, throughout the 3 months, even in every war or conflict zone, women and girls are the most targeted, and they are raped, tortured. Unfortunately, this man took me somewhere and raped by him. I pray that he killed me, but he didn't. He was hoping that everyone or even a gang of killers will come and probably torture me more. For some reason, I managed myself to meet my mom again and my sister. It was very hard for them to see what happened to me. Very hard for my mom. But somehow when you survive something happen and a good, kind person in a small community, Muslim community, which was our neighbor, healers until the country was liberated. Of course, so many people in my family were murdered. My grandparents, many family members, but on my dad's side, almost everyone was killed. But on my mom's side, thank God, I have few people survived, including my cousin Maki that you mentioned. But my soul, even though I was praying, I was very, very broken.
Yeah.
I was crushed. I didn't know, a young 14-year-old, I didn't know how my life would be like, how I'm going to function on a daily basis, what I went through, and I didn't know how to deal with it, but thank God, my mom is a very strong woman, and I thank God I have her, because there are so many people who have lost almost everyone, and even a parent, they don't have a parent to cry with, and she encouraged me to be, of course we encourage each other to be strong, but in those moments I didn't know what was going else to happen, until when I discovered that I was, I contracted HIV as a result of that. So it was another painful thing to deal with. Rape, which was something that I didn't even know how to deal with, and then living with HIV, very, very hard. But I'm so thankful. That's how I was able to meet you, and when I came here, I'm so grateful to have met wonderful people like you, and I don't know if you would like to say something, how...
Say something. Well, first of all, I mean, my heart, of course, goes out to you, as I'm sure all of us do, that, to contain what you've had to contain, and to experience this unimaginable brutality. And yet, I mean, Consolee is one of the most joyous people that you can meet. At 35, she's 35 now. You're getting older. Yes, we're both getting older. And I think what I'd like you to tell them, if you would, is how you got through this. I mean, for a long time you couldn't speak about it, but to talk about the healing that you went through and what you've learned and what you want to impart to them, so that, of course, we don't all go home miserable. No. No. Yeah.
Thank you. Even though I was so deeply painful within from those experiences, and I'm so grateful that I have a mom who really encouraged me to never hate anyone. And that's one thing that we kept telling each other, that we should not hate those people, because it was not going to help me, even to help ourselves for our well-being. For us is to just learn to forgive them and just learn to make sure, because that's the reason why I think I was able to be strong enough to be able to start a journey of healing. It was very, very hard, but I had to learn to consciously tell myself that hating someone is going to be a poison to my well-being. So for me to be able to live a healthy and fulfilling life, I should make sure that I'm not carrying any hatred towards anyone. And I'm so grateful that I learned that from my mom, and she kept encouraging me to do the same way. And also having faith within, learning to meet people like you who helped me to learn positive things, and learning that despite all the things I've endured, but life is still worth living. And for me, I remember the first time when I was in the hospital, I remember the book you brought for me, A Return to Love, which was written by Marianne Williamson. It really helped me so much. It showed me that I should keep encouraging myself. These are the kind of positive things that I kept learning and kept using in my life, and also to have a mind that keeps reminding me that there are people who went through worse than me, and at least I'm able to stand, even though I have HIV. But there are women who have kids from rape, and there are women also who are not functioning physically because of what happened. They were tortured, and I know there are women who would never be able to even have the courage to talk about their own experiences, and they have that deep wound within themselves. They don't know how to deal with what they went through. At least I'm so lucky enough to have that support around me to help me heal. And for me, even though it took me a long time, as you know, before I was not the person who was very much talking, and but gradually, when I was learning the positive things, and also praying, of course, having these positive affirmation within myself, that kept encouraging me to remind myself that I should be a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. At least I know, even though there are someone who went through worse, but at least when they hear me telling the story, they feel a part of them that someone is telling what they went through. So at least they feel that some of the stories, their story is someone is hearing their story. So for me, I know, even coming in a culture where we're not very much, it's not even very easy to talk about some deep, painful things. But I know for me, especially as a young person, those who are my age will never, there are some of them will never be able to talk about their own experience until probably their age, very old, or I don't know. But I know for sure that for me, that having the courage to talk about it, it has helped me also, because I felt also that it was almost like a huge load that I carried on my shoulder, that came out of my shoulder, and I felt the relief. I felt the breathe. I could even sleep. I could even do things probably, or love myself more. And I think I want someone else who is a survivor, or someone else who went through the tragedy, to feel that no matter what you go through, but there's a hope. There's a hope. No matter what circumstances you may face in your life, don't lose hope. Because for losing hope is the beginning of your own self-defeat. And when you have faith, you have strength. And I think I have that mantra. Those mantras really help me on a daily basis for me. So.
Thank you. So I think I'd like to, if you're open to it, open up to questions that someone might have. And
how did you end up in the how did you end up in the United States, and did your whole family come with you, or was it, how long have you been here?
Thank you for asking. I came in the United States December 2001, and my cousin Makire, she was mentioning, she's the one actually who came first and helped me to come here. And then I have another cousin also who of course lost everyone in her family. My mom raised us in the same household, so she lives now in Pittsburgh. So I have 3 people here, so that means I only have 3 people in the U.S. and my mom who survived with me and my sister still live in Rwanda. So yeah.
And she's here under political asylum.
Yeah. So since December 2001, I'm here. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, I don't need that. Excuse me, can I ask you, do you live far from Kigali? And did you see any European troops or UN troops in all 3 months you were going through this?
No, for me, I was not in Kigali. Actually, I was born in Kibuye. I don't know if you're familiar looking at the map. It's around the Lake Kivu, not far from the Lake Kivu. That means it's somewhere. It's not far from when you go to DRC. It's not as much. It's not that far, but it's not close to Kigali. No, so I didn't see them.
You saw no Europeans?
No, you mean
UN
the
troops?
French?
French, Belgium, any UN troops? Nobody?
But actually, we had French people in the area. Zone, they called it Zone Turquoise. The French people were in the country. Unfortunately, they supported the killers.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but those are the only people that I've been able to see. Yeah.
Could you just tell me the name of the lake again?
Pardon?
The lake that your town was by. The lake?
Kibuye, Lake Kivu. Yeah, it's about, for us, it's almost like 30 minutes from where we live to the Lake Kivu. So when you drive, it's almost like 30 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How did the Hutus identify the Tutsis? I mean, is it their physical difference? I mean, how did they know they were going to massacre?
Yeah. Because of how the Belgians, colonized, when they colonized the country, they managed to actually issue identity cards because they were measuring, at that time they were measuring who's Tutsi, how they look, and the Hutus, how they, but anyways, we all look the same. It's just what they wanted to, they had motives, but they made sure that they issued identity cards. That was many decades ago. And then from that time, that identity card, whoever had it from that time showing if you're a Hutu, it had a Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. So if you're a Tutsi, they just had to, mention who you are in the identity card. So many people had those identity cards from, if you are 16, so you get that identity cards because of your family. If they were at that time Tutsi, so you get that. So those who had identity cards were, of course, but again, in Rwanda, everybody knew each other. So for some reason, for us in my family and all the people, they knew who we were. So, and it was not difficult for them to know who is a Tutsi and Hutu because they have known each other for a long time. And yeah.
What is the difference between the Tutsis and the Hutus and the others? Why were you singled out? Is it a religion or what?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
What was the difference?
The question
between
was,
the two
what,
and the-
what's the difference between the Tutsis and the Hutus? You asked, is it a religion or what? Do you want me to answer? Okay, I'm going to answer it for her. Okay, The Tutsis, well, first of all, the first indigenous people were the Twa, which were the Pygmies, only 1%. They lived in the forest. Then came the Hutus, and the Hutus were mostly agrarian. They worked the fields. And they were they tended to be a bit shorter, and the features were a little flatter. And then the Tutsis, who came down from Egypt, Ethiopia, those areas, came from the lineage of kings. They were originally very, very tall, like 7 feet. They were called the giants of Africa. And they came in, first the Hutus fought with the Twa, then the Tutsis came and fought with the Hutus. Well, you know the story. It's the human condition, it seems. And so then the Belgian and also the Germans had come in, and it was specifically the Belgians, though, that gave out these identity cards and would actually measure the size of the nose to accent the differences. And the Belgians made the Tutsis the ruling class. And of course, there was a lot of animosity and jealousy. So it was a very, it was a cauldron. It was a cauldron.
Yes, I'm sorry, but the prime minister or the president who was shot out of the air was actually a Hutu, was he not?
Yeah.
Wait,
So
you
the
have-
ruling class, when did it switch from
We
Tutsi
can't hear
to-
back here.
Can you
When was
repeat the
Tutsi-
question?
When were the Tutsis the ruling class?
Judith, can you repeat all the questions?
Oh, repeat the question. Okay.
Sorry. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
The question was, since the president who was shot down in the plane was a Hutu, when was the shift in the ruling class? Do you have the answer? Okay, good.
Yeah. Actually, when the Belgians left the country, already the Hutus have been in power, and because actually what happened was the Tutsis were the Belgians made sure that the Hutus, somehow didn't like Tutsis because they felt like they mentioned to them that they may be a threat to them, and somehow, and since 1959 it was more about Hutus, running the country. So, and that's when the hatred started coming. So, and because the Hutus were a majority, of course, they started denying things to Tutsis, and most of them since 1959, Tutsis started going into exile. So when the president at that time was shut down, he was the one, of course, within the country, the Hutus were the ones inciting all the hatred. So he was coming from the peace accord in Arusha in Tanzania, one of the neighboring countries. So because the way it happened, we don't know exactly, what happened, how, we feel like probably those who were in the country at that time, the government, they didn't want him to have that peace accord where, so because they were denying those who were in exile to come in the country. So the Tutsis were in exile to come in their country. They were just saying that the country is too small to add more people and all that. So, but that was an excuse. So when he was shot, I think they probably used a way to, I don't know if they were them killed him, but they used a way to, when he was shot down, that's when they started the genocide. So we felt like they used that as a way to kill the Tutsis, but they already planned the genocide because they had everything already in order, and machetes which were being imported from other countries, so they were already organized and they knew what they were going to do. So, yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Other than the exiles from Rwanda, are there Hutus and Tutsis in other countries?
Can you repeat the question so that everybody? Oh. Were there,
Other than the exiles from Rwanda, are there Hutu people and Tutsi people in other countries other than Rwanda?
are there other Hutus and Tutsis in other countries?
Right.
I think we all live in different countries, all of us, Hutus and Tutsi. But one thing I would mention is that in Rwanda, since right after the genocide, because of what happened, we no longer use the Hutus and Tutsis, so we actually don't have those identity cards mentioning who, Tutsis and Hutus. We are now Rwandans, so we prefer saying we are Rwandans now. So, but of course, in the history, what happened with, being a Tutsi and Hutu, of course, that's one thing. But now, what we try to make sure that younger generation are learning to love each other, not hating one another, to educate them what happened that was wrong, to separate people who are pretty much the same and having same culture because we speak the same language. There's not really any differentiation between us. We all speak the same language. So we are trying to educate them that, what happened was wrong. So we have to learn good things and to love one another without, we are all Rwandans, so yeah.
I want to speak a few words of Kinyarwanda. To hear the sound of the language, to hear Kinyarwanda.
Murakoze cyane kuntumira hano. Imana ibahe umugisha. How does that sound like? I say that thank you so much for having me here. It was an honor to speak to you. God bless you. Unfortunately, when I came here, I was zero English. So I had to learn, of course, and I'm still learning. And I think one thing that I told myself when I came here, I said, I'm lucky to be here. So for me, when I decided to start telling my story, of course, I have to learn that in order for me to communicate with people well to what happened. Of course, it's still hard sometimes to explain certain things because of probably the cultures. So our cultures are different. So, but I made a conscious decision to keep learning, and of course, I want to also learn Spanish, so hopefully soon I'll speak Spanish as well. But so far, I know 3 languages.
Well, I guess, is it all right? People have more questions in the back and then up here.
Thank you for sharing your story, first of all. And I'm wondering about your feelings. I think what you say about forgiveness is so powerful and so important for survivors, and stories that I've heard from other survivors as well, that forgiveness is what kind of powers them forward. And I'm wondering what your feelings are about the Gacaca courts and the justice system that has happened since then, and how does a country move forward after something like this?
Thank you for asking that question. Of course, when it comes to forgiveness, it's an individual thing. But what I've learned especially from survivors, we didn't have. Thank God, we've not been encouraged to hate those who have been persecuting us. So we've learned to not hate them. You may not necessarily, say I forgive those people, but you learn to not hate them because it's not good for you. If you want to move forward and have a healthy and fulfilling life, you you need to learn, because we had to go back and live next door neighbors. I mean, our countries, that's how different it is probably to other places in the world. We had to live again next door to someone who sometimes been in the market, somebody who has been running after you with a machete, or and somehow there were people who are not really remorseful for what they have done. So, and I think when it comes to gachacha, which she mentioned, which was gachacha was a traditional court which was used at that time because there were so many people have been, the killers, the perpetrators were so many. The country didn't know what to do with them, and using a normal way of putting them in the court, was not very easy at all. So they used a traditional way of, which used to call gachacha. Gachacha was a way of uniting neighbors who had some dispute about something or family issues, but they used that as a way to, use a way to help the perpetrators to meet the survivors, so they can, some of them confess what they did, or they would just, it was not very easy, but they managed to put together the perpetrators and survivors, and they trained the judges in the communities to go there and help and make sure that, at least some justice happened to survivors. But for me, I think, personally, I think it helped to survivors to find, at least if a perpetrator will show where your family member was killed, at least you can give a decent burial to your family member. To me, I feel it's some justice to me, because there are others who confess what they did, but to me, I feel like there are some justice. It's not enough for survivors, because somehow there are people who you come out and feel more painful, hearing when someone is standing and talking about they murdered your family member. So, and I think somehow that was the only way to help the country. So, I'm grateful they came up with that. So, survivors are the most resilient people, because they manage to help themselves as well. And of course, the government has done so many things to encourage them to be strong, and they've done wherever they could. And I think we've come a long way. Looking where we were before and where we are now, I think, to me, I found it really amazing, because there are places in the world where they went through genocide or anything else, that when you see now come in the country, you see people are doing things well, and they are going to the market very safely. And even though we still have those pain within ourselves, of course, for survivors, it will take a long time to heal, because there are so many challenges, of course, with the survivors. When you don't have the entire family, when everybody was killed, or you're a woman who is living alone, and when you used to have a big family, it's very hard to, on a daily basis. It's not going, your life is totally, it's different. So, but still having a country that doesn't allow that kind of discrimination anymore, to me, I find it very amazing. To me, I'm grateful that we don't have that. So at least the younger generation are learning different. So hopefully that we won't have anything like this happening to our country anymore. So, and I think for our survivors, we encourage each other. Of course, we have to keep helping each other and encouraging young people also to learn from our stories, because we need to learn to love one another, care one another, no matter where we come from. Everybody matters. So, and I'm grateful that we were encouraged to our government encouraged us to do that, and I think as the time go by, hopefully I will have many years to live and see, what our younger generation would do, those who are born behind us. So yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Yes, prior to the genocide, there was intermarriage between the two tribes, if that's the correct term. And if so, the products, the children of those intermarriages, was the confusion which side they were on?
Yeah.
Whether they're going to be killed or
Just repeat the question. Oh, yeah, I can repeat. So the question was about intermarriage between the Hutus and the Tutsis, which had taken place before the genocide, and was that confusing, and what happened as a result of that?
No, I have friends I know who were born into intermarriages, yeah, like that. So those who were having, for instance, like you have a Hutu father, and your mom is a Tutsi. If your father is not really, because sometimes their husbands will kill their wives. They will say, I don't want to have a snake in my house anymore. So they will kill their wives, and sometimes they will kill their kids too. Or they choose to kill their wives and keep the kids. So they are also, but I know some of them who hid their wives because they didn't want to, they didn't believe in that. So, and I know, but those who were, if the wife is a Hutu and the husband is a Tutsi, actually the husband was being searched to be killed. So sometimes they would kill both of them and their children, or they would just kill the husband, the kids, and would leave the wife there and saying that she would die with the grief. Because even sometimes there are examples of a woman, her brothers or even her family members will go and kill her husband and the kids. That's her family going to kill her husband and kids, saying that we don't like these snakes and cockroaches in our family. So they would just say, you come to back to our family. So of course it's not very easy. They leave the woman with grief and sadness and deep wound, and those are kind of instances happen. But there are others who were able to hide them, because not everybody really Hutu participated in the genocide, because they were, for me to survive or someone survived because someone did something. So there are, of course, some of them were so kind, didn't even believe in hurting anyone. So yeah, there are so many, stories that you find like that. So yeah.
I thought your notion of being a voice for others who had similar experiences but cannot speak for themselves is wonderful. And I was wondering about the development of that notion, if it just came from your experience of speaking like this, or if it was suggested by somebody, or from reading, or just how you began to think like that.
Because I knowing what happened, because of knowing, especially as a young woman, knowing that there are women who have been raped and who are there and will never speak about what happened to them. And for me, because I've had conversations, some of them who confide in me and say, we are not going to talk about it, but thank you for telling the story, because I feel, even though I'm not going to talk about it, at least I feel that you helped me somehow. So, and somehow, I know, because there are some of them who went through worse, really went through worse. But for me, I just feel that at least I help that person to feel that no one, because we have a big movement of deniers already out there to what happened to us. So at least when I talk about it, I feel like no one is going to that person there is not going to feel like someone who's out there talking, we never had a genocide, or, you know, of course with the Holocaust, we have seen that it happened. So for us too, it started happening. So I feel that when I talk about it, at least someone will learn what happened to someone else. So even though they may not know a detailed story of that person, but at least they will have an idea of what happened to the other person. So that's what that's how I feel. Yeah.
We have time for one more question, yeah?
How did the genocide stop? What caused it to stop?
The question was, how did the genocide stop? What made it stop after it was 100 days?
Though the Tutsis were in exile for so many years since 1959, they actually kept pushing, asking the former government at that time that they wanted to come back in their country. So they were refused to come back in the country. So that's how they formed a movement outside of, where they lived in Uganda, Tanzania, and many other neighboring countries. So those are the ones actually who were able to stop the genocide, the RPF, yeah. They stopped the genocide. They fought hard. I mean, it was very, very hard. Of course, when they came in the country, many people were murdered, but they were able to stop the genocide and form a new government, which really they were inherited a lot of pain and so many things, but they managed to make sure that they will do whatever they can to, to help heal the country. So, yeah.